Hi, I'm Alejandra Moreno.
And I'm Taylor Kaufman.
Welcome to the Wake Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the question that everybody asks. When is the right time to start working on my estate plan? And we've said in prior episodes, before you need it, right?
Yes.
All these documents, before you need it is the right time. But when is the right time? Mm-hmm. Back when I used to be in BNI and I had to do my weekly commercials, I used to always say, if you just got married, just bought a house, just had a kid, it's the right time. When we were talking about this episode, you said if you just started a business, which is also, basically there is no right time. Mm-hmm. The time is now. But even if you think you don't have anything, everybody has something. Even if it's just kids, even if it's just family. So, as soon as you feel like you're asking that question, when's the right time? I think it's the right time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one thing I'll add to that, kids, house, business is also when your kid turns 18 too, which we've spoken about in another episode. But when your kid turns 18, it's important to start thinking about maybe an estate plan for them. Not necessarily a will or trust if they don't have any assets, but definitely advanced directives.
Yes. So if they're going off to college, God forbid something happens, you have access to their medical records, what's going on. You can consent to medical treatment. Mm-hmm. So yes, we have talked about it. As young as 18, at least advanced directives, it's the right time to get started.
Right.
And if you own anything, even if you have one bank account, you might not need a will or a trust, but you just need guidance on how to structure it to make sure that your family's not going to probate for one bank account, So if you're asking the question, I think that's your answer.
Yeah. Because these documents, like you said, you need them, you should have them before you actually need them. And a lot of people have this conception in their head that, just because they're married, if something happens, their spouse would be able to step in and, make these decisions for them, which is not the case.
It's not the case.
If something happens and you're incapacitated and an account is under your name, your spouse just can't go to the bank and take that. Yeah, they don't have access to that account, or even with doctors sometimes. They're not able to access those records. And, if you find yourself in a situation like that, you can't just create these documents. Once you're incapacitated, you cannot execute advanced directives, a will or trust. It's too late.
So you're absolutely right. And a lot of people have that misconception about probate. They say, but, doesn't everything go to me if something happens to my husband? Mm-hmm. Yeah, through a probate,
right.
but not automatically. Mm-hmm. So it's, you have to sit down and think about it. You have to look at all your accounts, see how everything is titled, see how everything is structured, and then go visit an estate planning attorney to get, the right recommendation, right? But no, you're right. It's there's so many misconceptions, which is why we started this podcast. So people start thinking like, wait, that's not what I thought. I thought it was different. I thought it was automatic. No, it's not. So
it's not.
That's a good observation.
Yeah.
If you're getting older, estate planning, I think traditionally was something that old people thought they needed. But I think even young people, if you have a family, if something happens to you, who's going to raise your kids? If you have a house, what's going to happen to your house? Like simple things like that. I don't think estate planning is for elderly people. A lot of times we have clients that want to do their estate plan and they're too old. Mm-hmm. And doing an estate plan at that time could cause even more issues in the future. So I don't think age is necessarily a factor, but if you are getting up there, you're getting ready to retire or something like that, then it's also a good time to start thinking about it.
Of course. And, a lot of people already have estate planning documents and they ask I already have them. Like, should I update them? And yes, you should definitely review your estate planning documents. And I think that any big milestone, right? If there is another birth of a child, if you purchase a property, anything like that, you should definitely contact your estate planning attorney to see if these documents do need to be updated. And if anyone passes away, right?
Yeah.
Someone that's necessarily, they don't have to be named in your documents, but let's say someone's spouse that is named in your document passed away, or a lot of times, someone like me, I would probably name my parents. Mm-hmm. And as my parents get older, maybe I want to add someone else or I want to add a successor, but it's important to, just any big life update that happens, to double check your estate planning documents.
Yes. And when people create their, estate plan, usually they'll put, the key players, your personal representative, your power of attorney, your healthcare surrogate. You put your spouse, you put people that are about your age, because that's what you think, well, if something happens to me, this is the person that's going to make the decisions. But as your estate plan goes on, it's not going to grow with you unless you make those changes. Mm-hmm. So, we recently have had clients that have said, I named this person in my document, but they're 90 years old. Like, we got to switch them out. So not only is it, when is the right time to do your estate plan, if you have an estate plan, when's the time to review it? And yes, a birth, a death, all of those things, acquiring more assets, all of those things are already, it's time. If you don't know what's in your estate plan,
then
it's time to review it. It's time to know what's in there to make sure that that's what you want, right? Yes, all of those things are good questions or good indicators that it's time to either get started or review, revise. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, creating your estate plan initially is a different process than updating your estate plan.
Yes.
Right. So, let's say you have an estate plan and you don't want to go through the whole process again. You think it's going to be this whole long, expensive thing of changing, someone that's named in your document. It's really not. And It's a lot easier than you think it is. And
for sure. It could just be a simple amendment, a simple codicil to a will. It's not going to be usually the same fee unless you want a whole new estate plan. That's another issue, right? But if you just need to change one name, if you just you acquired ownership of a company, we just need to know what happened, and then we can structure it so it doesn't break the bank. You're not going to start all over again. Right. It's not going to be the huge, and it's true, doing an estate plan is a lot of legwork. You have to be committed to do it because there's a lot of gathering of information, there's a lot of retitling of accounts, it's a lot of things that you need to put together on the front end. So if you have PTSD from that, you might say, you know what, just leave it as it is. I don't want to deal with it again. But no, that's not necessarily the case. It doesn't have to break the bank. And there are estate planning options that's good, for a young family that just needs to put something in writing. And as their family grows, as their wealth grows, we can upgrade them so their estate plan grows with them. That's the ideal. Get it done when you're younger, but you're not locked in. You can slowly upgrade as needed, right?
Of course, yeah.
The other thing is the exemption, right? The estate tax exemption, which right now is almost 14 million for a single person, 28 million for a couple. And whenever we mention that, they say, are there any estate taxes? And we mention those amounts. They're like, oh no, we don't have that. I wish we had that. Yes. And I'm like, well, more money, more problems. Yeah. So if you had that, I'd have to recommend something a lot more expensive. So it's good. But rumor has it, and we just came back from a conference, rumor has it that is going to sunset, and that might go down to 7 million. And that's a big jump. There a lot of people that think it's not going to affect them, because 20 million, it might affect them now when that law sunsets, if it sunsets. So we, as estate planning attorneys, we send out a yearly correspondence, just letting our clients know if there are any changes in the law, reminder if there's any changes in your family, let us know if you needed to upgrade your documents. But I do think that if there is a change with that, the estate tax exemption, I think a lot of clients are going to have to go back, review, and maybe restructure their estate plan to make sure that they're, not subject to that.
Of course. It's a big one.
Yeah. So we will also link on this podcast, we can link our questionnaire, right? So if you're thinking about doing your estate plan or you have an estate plan, you can start thinking about what you're going to need, what do you need to get together. And that way, once you talk to your estate planning attorney, you're ready to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Thank you for joining us today. I hope we answered a few of your doubts and questions from ASM Law Group, preserving what matters most for those who matter most. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Wake is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. The discussions in this podcast are meant to bring awareness to important issues, but they should not be considered a substitute for professional legal guidance. If you need legal advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult a qualified attorney.